International Women's Day 2022. Changing climates. Equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. All around the world, people are celebrating International Women's Day. International Women's Day is a chance to reflect and celebrate how far we have come while acknowledging we still have a way to go. Let's take a moment to see just how far we have come. In 1891, 30,000 signatures were gathered by Victorian women petitioning the Parliament to give women the right to vote. In 1895, South Australia gives women the right to vote and the right to stand for Parliament. 1902, non-Indigenous women over 21 get the right to vote and stand for Parliament in federal elections. 1903 saw the birth and the rise of the suffragette movement. While suffragettes were a derogatory term, women reclaimed it. They stood for deeds, not words, often chaining themselves to rails, smashing windows, and even, at times, detonating bombs. In 1908, women can vote in elections in Victoria, but they still can't stand for Parliament. Also in 1908, 15,000 women in New York protested for women's rights. This planted the seeds for International Women's Day. In 1909, the Socialist Party of America held the very first National Women's Day on the 28th of February. In 1910, a conference of 100 women from 17 countries was held to discuss women's rights. International Women's Day was voted for unanimously with a collective push for equal rights. 1911, the 28th of February, the first International Women's Day was held. Over 1 million people attended rallies. 1914 to 1918, World War I. Women filled roles vacated by men who had gone off to war, and they volunteered with the Red Cross and made valuable contributions to the war effort. 1922, the birth of the Country Women's Association. 1924, Victorian women can stand for election. 1939 to 1944, World War II. The Australian Women's Land Army saw women taking on traditionally male-orientated roles on farms. The Australian Women's Army recruited thousands of women for military duties. 1947, Indigenous women and Indigenous men were recognised as citizens. Up until 1956, a teacher would have to choose to either give up her profession or lie about her marital status if she was to get married. In 1956, the marriage ban for teachers were lifted and working women could continue to work in education. 1961, the contraceptive pill took Australia and the world by storm. Admittedly, women still needed the permission of their husbands, and it did carry with it a 27.5% luxury tax. But this saw the start of women's reproductive rights. 1962, Indigenous women received the vote. Up until 1965, women were permitted to attend pubs so long as they only attended the ladies' lounge. Often, they were only allowed to attend the ladies' lounge if they were accompanied by their husband. In 1965, a group of women came together and the feminists were ready to take on the fight. They defiantly left the lounge and marched into the public bar to demand a drink. Some, including Mel Thornton, mother of actor Sigrid Thornton, chained themselves to the bar to make a point. The legislation was changed, and women are now allowed to drink anywhere we wish. In 1969, first abortion rights were granted. Women could only access abortion if deemed medically necessary based on their physical health or mental health by a doctor. 1972. Women receive equal pay. Women's wages rose by 30% overall. 1972, the contraceptive pill became widely available. It was no longer considered luxury product and the luxury tax was dropped. Federal Childcare Act was also passed and single mothers' benefits were introduced in 1972. In 1973, the government decided it was important to invest in women's health services and working women's centres. 1974, equal minimum wage was granted. In 1975, the UN recognised International Women's Day. Family and domestic violence was a central concern of the second wave feminists. In 1975, the Whitlam government funded the first women's refuges. In 1976, rape in marriage was outlawed in South Australia. Up until this point, a woman was deemed to have given consent on her wedding day. 1978 saw the birth of the Reclaim the Night rallies. These were to raise awareness for violence and sexual assault against women, particularly sex workers. In 1979, pregnant women would no longer have to resign from their jobs. We are now entitled to 52 weeks unpaid maternity leave. Up until 1983, discrimination against women was still legal. In 1983, Australia ratified the Conventions on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. 1987, the Equal Opportunity Act passed, banning discrimination based on race, gender, sexuality and disability. In 2005, the law of provocation was abolished in Victoria. The defence of provocation could no longer be used to reduce a charge of murder to the lesser charge of manslaughter. In 2008, abortion was decriminalised in Victoria. 2011 saw the implementation of Australia's first national paid parental leave scheme. Parents are now eligible for up to 18 weeks leave while taking time off for the care of newborns or newly adopted children. In 2011, a representative of the Toronto Police Service announced that women could reduce their risk of sexual harassment by not dressing like sluts. These comments sparked global outrage. As a result, the Melbourne branch of the Slut Walk was founded. Up until 2015, it was legal to stand and protest and harass people and film people coming in and out of abortion clinics. In 2015, the laws were changed and it is now illegal to protest or go within 150 metres of an abortion clinic with the purpose of harassment. In 2018, after 18 years of campaigning, the state and federal government voted unanimously to remove the GST on menstrual products, which had been categorised up until that point as luxury items. Also in 2018, the Matildas earned gender equality. They now earn the same as their male counterparts, the Socceroos. 2019 saw equal gender representation in the Senate and abortion decriminalised in New South Wales. And 2022, International Women's Day is focused on gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow, looking at how supporting women's rights go hand in hand with climate justice. These events didn't just happen. At Women's Health and Wellbeing Services, we acknowledge the women who have walked before us. Women like Vida Goldstein, who in 1903 stood for federal election. She was the first woman in the Commonwealth to stand for Parliament in Australia and the first woman to be allowed to do so. Women like Clara Zetkins, who in 1910 stood in a conference of 100 women from 17 countries and suggested an International Women's Day. Collectively pushing for equal rights, International Women's Day was voted on unanimously. Grace Benny, 1919, was the first woman in local government council. In 1943, Enid Lyons was the first Australian to be elected to the House of Representatives, and Dorothy Tangney became the first woman senator elected to represent Western Australia in the Senate. Love her or hate her, Germaine Greer became a household name in 1970 with her book The Female Eunuch. The book was so controversial, some women had to hide it from their husbands. In 1975, Dame Margaret Guilfoyle was the first woman to be appointed to federal cabinet as a minister. She held the portfolio of education and social security in the Fraser Liberal government. We celebrate women like Sigourney Weaver, who in 1979 paved the way for Hollywood female heroes. Up until that point, there was a sea of male action heroes. Sigourney Weaver was the first of her kind. In 1986, Joan Child became the first female Speaker in the House of Representatives. She was a member for the Australian Labor Party at the time and a member for the seat of Henty. Janine Haynes became the first female leader of an Australian political party in 1986. She led the Australian Democrats. Mary Genevieve Gaudron became the first woman to be appointed as a High Court judge in 1987. Louise O'Donoghue was elected the first chair of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission in 1990. We celebrate women like the Spice Girls, who in 1994 spiced up our lives and were the biggest thing since the Beatles. Women like Dame Quentin Bryce, when she assumed the office of Governor-General in Australia in 2008, the 25th person to hold the office and the first and only female to do so to date. In 2010, Julia Gillard became Australia's first female Prime Minister. This was followed in 2012 when she gave her famous misogyny speech. 2016, Linda Burney was the first Indigenous woman to be elected to the House of Representatives. And we celebrate women like Grace Tame, who in 2019 fought with her Let Her Speak campaign to allow survivors of sexual crimes to be free to speak publicly about their story. In 2019, the Tasmanian government amended the gag laws, and in 2021, Grace Tame was named Australian of the Year. These are some of the names of the people in our record books. We also acknowledge the women who came together in 1991 and saw the need for women's health services in Gosnells, and everyone who has been associated with Gosnells Women's Health Service and Women's Health and Wellbeing Service since. We acknowledge the strong women, the mothers, the grandmothers, the aunts, the friends, and the influential women in everyday people's lives. These amazing women made changes to the social climate and to break the bias. We celebrate the acts of courage and determination of ordinary, everyday, extraordinary women. Women who played a role in shaping this and future generations of women to come.
For International Women's Day, we would like to say all women are
brave,
strong
and unique.
and we are proud to
Know them
raise them.
and be them.
Happy International Women's Day.
Woo! I'm slow.
Happy International Women's Day for 2022. Wishing all of the wonderful and amazing and inspiring women in my life a very happy International Women's Day. Personally, I would love to thank my nana and my mum who have instilled in me that I deserve a seat at the table as much as the men and the other males in my family, on workplaces and everywhere that I go. I definitely think that times have changed and are continuing to change for the better, and it's because of women that have walked before us that have really laid the groundwork for us to have the freedoms and the rights that we do now. I know that my nana as a young woman had to sign letters off as your dutiful servant, and when she was married it was just assumed that she would no longer go into the workplace. So for her that wasn't how it was going to be, and she went on to continue to educate herself further and demanded that spot at the table. So I am eternally grateful for strong women like that in my life, and I will continue to instill the same in my son and daughter as well going forward. So to all of the amazing women that I know, happy International Women's Day, and also to the amazing men as well who get it and understand why it's so important. Good job. Keep up the great work.
To me, International Women's Day really gives us an opportunity to recognise and celebrate all of the amazing achievements of women in our society. And it really inspires us to think about what we can achieve as well, and to break down some of those biases and those barriers that women have traditionally encountered.
Happy International Women's Day, everyone. To all the strong, amazing, wonderful women who have inspired me throughout my life, especially my mum. Have a great day.
A massive thank you to all of the special and influential women in my life, especially you, Mum. Happy International Women's Day.
On days like this, I always like to consider kind of the important women in my life, one of whom was my great-grandmother. One of the most honest, most caring, most zero F's given women I think I've ever met in my life. So I suppose, I'm going to dedicate this. I'm going to dedicate this to all the old ladies out there. Because, if you can do anything in life, be nice. Unless you can be a I don't give an F old woman, at which point totally do that, because that's way, way cooler.
Happy International Women's Day to everybody, and thank you to all the women that have gone before us and made the world a better place.
G'day, I'm Jane. Happy International Women's Day 2022. I wanted to share my inspirations with you today. I'm inspired by Iris Apfel. If you don't know her, she's a New York fashion doyenne. She's got big round black glasses and she's literally 100 years old. She takes joy in dressing to the max with everything that she owns, not quite every day. It's an everyday form of creativity and art practice and just having fun with wardrobe. And she takes just as much pleasure from something that cost her $2 as something that cost her $5,000. Just putting it all together in mishmash. As you can see, I'm quite inspired by her. I'm also inspired not just by people who are creative, but by people who are smart and strong. And politicians like Julia Gillard and Penny Wong. They are gracious under fire and calm and collected. And sometimes I wish I had a lot more of that going on. But I'm so pleased that they are such an inspiration, not just for me, but for everyone. I'm also inspired by CEOs on boards in very male-dominated industries, breaking that bias that women are too emotional to be in charge and a CEO, can't do maths, can't read maps, etc., all of those things. And so I love seeing women in high roles in mining and resources and engineering. I think they're wonderful. I also like seeing women over 40 who don't have kids. I'm a woman over 40 and I don't have kids, and I find sometimes I question my life choices. This is my choice not to have kids, but it's wonderful that solidarity that I feel with women over 40 who don't have kids. I know it's kind of a weird one, but it makes me feel like I'm going to have friends when I'm older and greyer. So thank you very much, all those women out there, just ordinary, everyday women going about your own business, just being gracious under fire and amazing. Thank you. Keep up the good work because you're inspiring us.
Happy International Women's Day!
So I feel really lucky to have a lot of really inspiring women in my family and as my friends. I have a grandma and great grandma who came to Australia by fleeing different wars, different times. One was just a young girl and one had 2 young children herself. I have a grandma who worked as a farmer for most of her life with her sister in a small country town in WA. Also raising a family at the same time, which can't have been easy, being quite remote. And obviously back in the day it was pretty much a male-dominated field, so again it can't have been easy for her. I have an aunt who is just the kindest person ever. She works in the mental health field, which can be quite draining, but she never loses her softness and always has time for her family, her friends, doesn't lose her empathy. I don't know how she draws on more kindness all the time. It's really inspiring, actually. She's actually taught me to, embrace being nurturing. You can still be really strong, successful, get ahead, but if you retain that softness, it can actually be quite empowering, which I think can be hard to lean into in this kind of day and age. We're always trying to fight in some aspect of our life to be heard, be taken seriously. So really leaning into that kindness can be a little bit hard to do sometimes, but yeah, as I said, it's quite empowering. So I'm thankful for that lesson from her. I'm really inspired by my friends as well. I've got such beautiful friends doing different things all over the world and and on their own timelines. I've got friends who are studying, getting married, buying their first house, working in such diverse fields, living overseas. It's really special to me that my friends and I have these options for what we want to do with our life. It's just really nice to see, because obviously a lot of women still don't have the freedoms that we have, but it's nice to see that it's getting better. Women are starting to choose their own timelines and choose what makes them happy. I've got friends having children at the moment, so becoming mothers for the first time, so that's really exciting. Seeing them get to raise the next generation, which is crazy. But I just feel really, really happy and really lucky to to have such a great bunch of women around me, just really inspiring me at all times, basically. Yeah, so I feel really lucky, and happy International Women's Day.
Women, you are awesome. Happy International Women's Day. Yay!
Happy International Women's Day. There's no limit to what we women can do and can accomplish, and every woman's success should be an inspiration to one another. We are strongest when we encourage each other. Supporting and celebrating women's rights is a year-round responsibility, but today is our day. And for where there is a woman, there is always magic. Happy International Women's Day.